It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set.
Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland. And on the Tuesday, John Blau from the Post and Courier out of the gates with us. John, welcome in. Hope you're doing well, my man.
Doing good. How are you?
I'm great. I tell you what, man, it really is the stretch run, right, for Clemson and now Wake Forest coming to town. And I got to imagine for the Tigers after their loss at NC State, then their loss at Pitt, kind of knowing the scenario in the Atlantic Coast Conference, this is probably the best they could ask for, right? I mean, at least still kind of having a chance in their final Atlantic Coast Conference game.
Yeah, I think Dabo Swanny said there's a wounded dog on the side of the road, just hoping somebody picks them up and gives them some help. So, I mean, they're wounded, but there is a chance that somebody drives by and gives them a lift, and that would be obviously doing their own job against Wake Forest and beating them, and you've got the advantage over them. But then also hoping that Boston College beats them the next week, or you look at NC State and you hope they drop a couple of games. Probably more likely is the chance of taking matters in your own hands and then hoping Phil Dracovic and Boston College has something up their sleeve. But yeah, I mean, the fact that this Clemson team was 4-3 at one point. They've won 3 games in a row. They have a chance to move to 8-3, potentially 9-10 wins is not completely out of the picture. A lot of teams would have folded by now, and for them not to have folded and kind of continued through a lot of the adversity they've had, the injuries, all that, it's definitely a credit to them to still be in this position.
John, thinking about what this game means for Clemson, of course, a 34-game home winning streak extension would be nice, I know. But then you've also got Wake Forest, right? And they're rolling into Death Valley feeling like, okay, this is it. We can finally be the team that vanquishes these Clemson Tigers that have dominated the entire league for 6 consecutive seasons.
Yeah, I mean, Wake Forest, obviously, they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, I would think, too. I mean, they were undefeated until that loss to UNC. They put up a ton of points. They've been probably the best team in the ACC this year. And I mean, they've never been in the CFP discussion. They're at number 13 in the rankings. All the questions this week to all the coordinators and the Dabo is kind of like, oh, how odd this is. The roles are flipped and Wake Forest actually has a chance. How does Wake Forest probably feel, hearing all this stuff about how, that this isn't usual for them to be, in this position. And Vegas even had them as underdogs. I mean, I think the initial line was 5, +5 or -5 for Clemson, for them to be favorites, even though, they're unranked. Wake Forest is. I mean, this is a huge game for Wake Forest to kind of show that, they are the best team in the ACC this year. And it's not that they played every other team in the ACC other than Clemson. I mean, they have a chance to come here and that winning streak for Clemson at home to put themselves in position for a really nice bowl game. I mean, if they beat Clemson, if they win out at Boston College, you would think, the New Year's Six would be within reach for Wake Forest potentially. So yeah, it's a huge game for them and to kind of really show, especially against a defense of this strength, how good this offense really is and how good this football team is.
On Twitter, he's at John_Blau. And again, he writes for the Charleston Post and Courier. So, John, I'll ask you, as a guy who's still relatively new to the beat, how surprising is it that here we are, 10 going on now, 11 games in to Clemson's regular season, and it just still feels discombobulated offensively? I mean, how surprising. If 1 is it's not surprising at all, and 10 is Swanny, I feel like my hair's been sewn to the carpet. I mean, where are you on that front?
I mean, in terms of surprising, if you just kind of take all the factors out, I would say like a 9. Like, this is it's sort of crazy to see, it continue on week after week. But if you've been along for the ride, you've seen some of the things that have happened that have made it the way it is. I mean, the offensive line, so many pieces have continued to shift. I mean, you finally find Hunter Rayburn at center, and you feel like, okay, now they can move forward with this line. Then he's out with COVID, and then Will Putnam's out with an ankle or foot, and Matt Bockhorst goes out for the year with an ACL. You got, Kobe Pace and Will Shipley both held out last week, could have played, but I mean, they've been dealing with their own stuff with Shipley with a knee / upper leg tibia. Kobe Pace with COVID and then concussion protocol, and now we've got Justin Ross potentially out for the rest of the year with the stress fracture in his foot. You've had so many different pieces of receiver as well. I mean, it's just been such a kind of a shifting, musical chairs on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, when you go back to the first week of the season, Georgia not having it together for Georgia Tech, continuing to have struggles, between the wide receivers and the quarterback having a connection, pass protection issues at times. It's been a whole mess of things. At the same time, there have been so many shifting pieces that you kind of understand why it's been hard to kind of get it rolling in the right direction. But UConn, that game in itself was a little confusing just because it was a game where you expected them, no matter who the guys were in the game, to be able to move the ball, to be able to move UConn. Not quite able to do that. That gives you a little bit of concern going into a game against Wake Forest. So, just a lot of things that have been confounding about this season. Some of it, Clemson's fault for not being able to really get it put together, and then some of it just circumstances that I don't know if we could have predicted or understood coming into the year.
It has been a strange ride, and yet Clemson still has a chance, as John mentioned, with a little luck. But it all begins on Saturday as they kick off at noon against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, who look to take their stand and head to the ACC championship game. We'll see what happens for the Clemson Tigers. I would imagine, too, that from the Clemson standpoint, the atmosphere will be significant. And I know there's been a little bit of a letdown from some of the fans because this season hasn't panned out like expected. But when you're hanging onto that little thread of hope of an ACC championship, and you know that if you lose, that's gone, plus all the other things, I would imagine the stadium might be as electric as it's been this entire season, no?
Yeah, and I mean, it was interesting to hear at Dabo Swinney's press conference, the Wake Forest allotment of tickets were not bought up. They were holding some back for them, and they didn't buy all of them, so it might even be more, Tigers fans in there than usual because they go buy up the visiting team's allotment as well. So, it's been thin at times. It hasn't been a complete capacity crowd every single week, but it's the fans who have been there have been rather loud. I mean, I remember that Florida State game and the way the coaches and the players were talking about it afterwards. It rained, a bunch of fans who went away in the third quarter. They came back. They were raucous. I mean, as loud as you would imagine, Death Valley to be. And you would hope in a game like this, especially, again, the chance for this senior class to finish out undefeated at home, to push to 34 with a potential of an ACC title bid on the line. You would think that Tigers fans would show up, and it should be pretty electric. And that is a plus on Clemson's side. They are at home. The road has not been a friendly place to them. So at least they're at home in this situation.
John, watching the Tigers this past Saturday, there was another thing that I think has kind of been there all year, but certainly it felt enhanced by DJ being a little bit banged up with his knee. He just seems to be progressing through things very slowly to me. And look, I know you're not a quarterback guru. I am not a quarterback coach. But when I watch other guys collegiately, professionally, they seem to move through their progressions much faster than DJ did. And I put a case study out there for our listeners to go back and just evaluate DJ a year ago versus Notre Dame versus this current rendition of DJ Uiagalelei that we're seeing. And, I think his pace of play is possibly as big of a problem as anything else that I see from him. You cannot hesitate at this level. And I think that he's got a lot of built-in hesitations in his game right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Darian Rencher was even talking about it. Just, in terms of the offense and just the youth that they have and some of the other issues that are being exposed, I mean, you used to have a guy like Travis Etienne who could, cover up some mistakes. I mean, everything didn't have to be perfect, and he could go, run for an 80-yard touchdown. You had Trevor Lawrence, and Darian Rencher was talking about these general play. He got absolutely blasted in pass protection. Trevor still throws like a 60-yard pass or whatever. I mean, there were those types of guys who would overcome some of the issues that are around them. It seems like DJ, again, if you go back to last year, he had much better pieces around him, much more veteran pieces. The offense that Trevor Lawrence had been running, he just got to run and looked really good doing it. It seems like that he's not quite at a stage yet in his career where when there are issues and things don't go right, that he's able to see it, improvise, make a play. It seems like sometimes something doesn't go right, a receiver doesn't quite run the right route, or there's some pressure coming up the middle of the interior offensive line. So the interior really struggled last week, and that's what Tony Elliott was talking about, not quite stepping up on all of his throws, and then some of them kind of sailed on him, stepping through the throw. But it seems like when there are issues and there are things that aren't completely right, DJ he doesn't know what to do next. He just doesn't quite have that experience. He doesn't quite know what to do in the moment. And that's something you got to hope that just as a young quarterback, he's going to learn from these situations. He's going to figure it out over an off season. He's going to have that memory bank of things to kind of look back on and understand what to do. And then B, just the pieces being more consistent around him. I mean, if you look at the receiving core again, Justin Ross is going to be out. It's going to be two freshmen, Bo and Dakari Collins, and it's going to be EJ Williams. Those are his receivers. Those were not the receivers he started the year with. You would hope that he'd be able to get more in sync with guys and trust his protection when that all firms up around him. But it is concerning that it's not quite at the level you want it to be, but it also has a chance, I would say, if we all just kind of take a breath for a second and wait for it to develop through a full season and maybe even into next year, even though I know that's a lot of patience for people to have, that may be the thing that everybody has to do. There just needs to be a little bit of patience to see how it unfolds over the next however many months, through this season and into next.
On Twitter, he's at John_Blau. That's JON_BLAU. Go follow him. John, Dabo Swanny also commented on his lack of being in the coaches poll this year. Of course, the situation that unfolded last year before their matchup with Ohio State was certainly some locker room fodder and some bulletin board material for the Buckeyes. Swanny said that it doesn't matter anyway. Who cares? And so he's out of it because he felt like it was a distraction for the team. I mean, when you look at it a year ago, and you, again, weren't covering Clemson at the time. As a matter of fact, you were in the Big Ten covering Indiana. But when you think about the way that shook out a year ago, I mean, what were your thoughts on it, just given the numbers of games that Ohio State had played and that sort of being Sweeney's justification at the time?
I mean, that's an interesting thing. Obviously, I was covering IU, and IU fans were upset because Ohio State had the rules changed at the last second so they could get into the Big Ten title game because they didn't play enough games.
Right.
IU wouldn't have been able to play anyway either because they had a COVID outbreak and they were out for 2 weeks. I mean, they would have been able to be there anyway. But I understood from that fan base's perspective kind of how it didn't seem fair. Ohio State didn't have to kind of go through the rigors that some other teams had to from week to week because they were, they had multiple bye weeks. I kind of understand it from both perspectives. Obviously, Ohio State got the last laugh with coming out in the CFP and playing the way they did. But at the same time, I don't blame Dabo if that's your justification for why you think Ohio State shouldn't be ranked in the top 10 because you don't think they played enough games and you want to reward the teams that have played games. Sure. It's just, obviously your critics and the people that want to kind of, crap on you in the moment, but they've got an opportunity to do it now because of what Ohio State did. And then you come out and say you're not voting anymore, which I kind of understand what he's saying. I mean, he doesn't want the distraction. I mean, it obviously became a storyline last year and he just doesn't want to deal with it. Obviously, Ohio State fans are now seeing it. And I still have I would still say my largest following is still back in the Big Ten. So as soon as I tweeted that, I feel like I got the most response on any tweet I've gotten all year because all the Ohio State people are still following me. So yeah, they're eating it up right now. But I kind of get it from both sides. I get Dabo not really wanting to, deal with it because it just didn't seem worth it. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. Why do it? especially from what happened last year. That was just his opinion. That's what people thought. And then the other hand, yeah, I mean, obviously Ohio State showed that they were way better than he ranked them. So maybe a little bit of 2020 hindsight. If your dad was saying you didn't want to do that, put that on the bulletin board. But hey, that's what happened. So now there is no info to be put on the bulletin board. But obviously they're having a down year, so it doesn't really matter. I guess it's kind of different.
Now, one other comment from Dabo Swanny that I know will pique the interest of our listeners here today on Clemson Sports Talk was Coach Swanny's comments earlier today about the transfer portal, saying that there's not a school in the country that's not going to have to recruit the portal. So from that standpoint, I mean, is this I know he's said they're not anti-portal, I guess you would say, but I mean, did this feel like to you a softening stance on the portal for Dabo Swanny and Clemson?
It feels like it's been softening throughout the season. It's interesting because even after he made that comment, though, he did say, like, I hope we don't have to use it. Like, he still hopes that they never have to use the portal. But at the same time, I mean, what they've gone through this year, I mean, you lose 4 guys mid-season. Are you sure you're going to be able to figure out? And again, this came out of a question that I asked him about Will Putnam he's considering him a sophomore right now because he didn't play much as a freshman. He had that COVID year. I was like, okay, so if you kind of figured out like 2022, 2023, how many scholarships you'll need. And he's like, oh, heck no. Like, I have no idea. No coach in college football has any idea because you're still losing guys mid-season via the portal. You're still trying to figure out what guys are going to come back for what years because of that COVID year. But you're going to be short. I mean, I don't think it's possible to not use the transfer portal, especially in this moment, because you're going to have guys that don't come back. You're going to have guys that transfer out. You're going to have all kinds of stuff happen. And unless you want to just kind of, be okay having 80 guys going into a season or 78 guys going into a season, you have to recruit the transfer portal. The only issue for Clemson, which is the issue which a lot of other teams won't have, is they can't guarantee playing time to a lot of these guys. I mean, a lot of these guys who are in the portal are guys who couldn't make it at their other institution. And why would Clemson recruit that guy and say, come here? Because that person might just end up being a second or third string player, which is what Dabo said. He said, if you guys know any players that want to come here and be a third string running back at Clemson, let me know. But I just don't think that's what the case is going to be with most of these guys. So they're kind of in a tough spot. I mean, they would have to be very picky and choosy about which guys they take. But I think they're going to have to at least look at it because I don't think numbers-wise you're going to be able to keep yourself at 85 without, doing that from time to time. So, yeah, I do think it's been softening, but I think it's just because it's just the reality of where they're at. I really don't think, unless you are completely able to re-recruit your entire team and keep everybody on board from year to year, it's hard to run a program that way because you are going to lose players with this one-time transfer rule and the portal being as easy to access as it is.
John Blau again of the Charleston Post-Courier. John, man, always appreciate you and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Lord.
John Blau again from the Charleston Post and Courier. So I know last week I was talking about Shane Beamer and the potential and all the justifications of why I thought he might go take the Virginia Tech job if it came open. Shane Beamer commented today on the Virginia Tech job because it did come open. It did. We'll let you hear that news. Justin Fuente out after 6 games. And, yeah, Gamecock Nation, Shane Beamer, he said the right things. And that's what he's supposed to do. So we'll see how it goes from there. 803-450-0086. I don't know what people expect him to say. I mean, what did Gamecock fans who are like, oh, Swanny, you're wrong, he's not going to leave to go to Virginia Tech. Let me ask you something. What did you expect him to say today? Oh, yeah, I'll be taking that job effective immediately. Of course not. Of course he's going to say he wants to be at South Carolina. Of course he's going to say it's his dream job. And you know what? It might be. And maybe he doesn't leave now. But I think it would be a stretch not to imagine that a former Virginia Tech player doesn't end up coaching at Virginia Tech, where his father was a legend, especially if things don't pan out in Columbia. As I said, I think this thing just moved quicker than people could imagine. And again, that was all on a qualifying statement that I made that I thought Shane Beamer would be bowl eligible right now, and he's not. He's not. We'll talk about that more when we get back. Stay with us. It is the show that shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk on a Tuesday afternoon. Again, Mike Yuva set to join the program in just a little bit, but first I do want to head out to his Twitter account for a minute. Of course, he covers the South Carolina Gamecocks for Gamecock Central. And so, Mike, I didn't get a chance to talk to him about this, and it may not simply because Shane Beamer tried to put to rest any speculation about him going to the Virginia Tech job. And this is something I've talked about quite a bit as something I thought was possible, especially if he was offered the job, which, again, is quite another thing. We're talking about you have to be offered the job. You don't just get to say, oh, yeah, I'll take it. You have to get offered the job. But again, with that job coming open earlier today, here's Shane Beamer's comments on it. And again, I have spoken on this a couple of times, but here's Shane Beamer.
You hate to ever see anyone lose their job. So tough from that standpoint. Obviously, I love Virginia Tech. I moved there when I was 10 years old. I went to high school there. I went to college there. I coached there. My parents still live there. So I have special memories of my time in Blacksburg, and that'll always be, special to me. But this is where I want to be. When I said this was my dream job, I wasn't just saying that to make it sound cool in a press conference or to get the job. This is where my wife and I and my family want to be. We didn't put that sign up over there at Williams-Brice Stadium that said "Welcome home" just because it was trendy in the slogan. This is home for me, and I want to be the head football coach here at South Carolina. I love working for Ray Tanner and Chance Miller. They are fantastic, and we have an amazing relationship. I love this state. I want to live in this state. I love this city. I want to live in this city. I told our team a couple of weeks ago, my son Hunter, he's in second grade, I guess. I want him to graduate high school from here in Columbia, and this is where I want to be. We're just getting started. Recruiting is going amazingly well. There's a lot of energy about this program right now. There's a lot of excitement about this program right now. My goal is to bring an SEC championship here to Columbia, and we're just in the beginning stages of it. So no, I'm the head coach at South Carolina. I want to be the head coach at South Carolina, and then probably beyond any of that is we use the word love around here a lot, and I love coaching these kids, and couldn't imagine not coaching these guys and love what they're about and love being their head football coach.
So there you go, Shane Beamer again. He used the word love. He used the word love there about South Carolina. But listen again here. Let's listen. Let's run back to the beginning real quick.
And obviously, I love Virginia Tech. I moved there when I was 10 years old. I went to high school there. I went to college there.
So look, there are people already on social media calling me out about the conversation and the thought process I had about it. And it has nothing to do with Shane Beamer leaving South Carolina. Not fearful of Shane Beamer. I'm not concerned about what Shane Beamer's doing. As a matter of fact, in the context of when I was asked the question, it appeared Shane Beamer was going to get South Carolina bowl eligible in his first year. It currently does not appear that way, which I thought getting them bowl eligible would have been overachieving. I think not being bowl eligible is right on par. He went from shooting a birdie on the hole, to being at par, maybe in some minds bogey. If they don't qualify for a bowl game at this point, it was a birdie. But this was going to be a great hole. Instead, maybe not with Auburn and Clemson looming for South Carolina. Now, because he stands up there behind the podium and says that and calls it his dream job, does that mean he's not going to Blacksburg, Virginia? Of course not. How many coaches in the history of sports have stood behind a podium and said, I love it here, and then they catch the next flight out of town? And I certainly would not expect him to leave Columbia in the middle of his first year either. But again, I can lay out all the reasons that it would make sense for Shane Beamer to go to Virginia Tech. One, it is a program that has more success in football historically than South Carolina. Two, his father and his family are there. Three, he loves it. He said so himself. Yeah, but Swanny, he said all this love Gamecock stuff too. What's the man supposed to say? What's he supposed to say as the head coach of South Carolina? And if he hasn't been offered the job yet, there's nothing to turn down. I mean, they just fired Justin Fuente today. And perhaps he doesn't take that job now. Maybe it is 3 or 4 years later, after he recognizes how difficult it's going to be to have sustained success at South Carolina. Maybe that's when he goes, well, you know what? It would be easier in the Coastal Division, Swanny. I think we'll go to Blacksburg. And that's fine, too. He has to come to that reality on his own. I know this. I am 44, and I have grown up watching South Carolina football. And I have seen the outcomes time and time again. And in that league, in the SEC now, it is extremely difficult. And if you are a coach, you ultimately want to win. You want to win championships. You want to win conference titles. You want to win division titles. You want to get into the college football playoff. And I'm not telling you it's completely impossible to do it at South Carolina. But nobody's ever done it. And I don't know that he's going to be the guy that's going to find a way, the magic elixir to push it through. Now, that's a painful thing for Gamecock fans to hear. And I apologize that you have to come here to hear the truth. But that is a very difficult place to be. And to imagine being on top of the SEC East when you constantly have to deal with Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee at a minimum, that's tough sledding. And you already struggle with Kentucky and Missouri. So, look, and you got Texas A&M across the conference. I mean, it's a tough situation. And I don't care what he said today. And he might be your coach next year, and that's all well and good. But again, my sentiments have not changed, and I talked about if he was offered the job. Has he been offered the job? We'll hit a quick break. Let me know. Stay with us. Back at it on the Tuesday. One more thing on the Shane Beamer stuff, because you guys got me through the break. I started thinking about this. Like, who is the person that you count on to give you sage advice? Who do you go to? Who do you look to when you are in a job title change situation? You know, certainly some of you are going to say, well, I talked to my wife about it. And yeah, I understand that. Perfectly valuable, perfectly, that is a perfect assessment and idea. Cannot deny that fact. Wives, great people to run ideas by, 100%. But a lot of you would ask your dad. Now, let's just talk about this for a second from Shane Beamer's perspective. And maybe even more so from the perspective of Frank Beamer. If Shane Beamer called up Frank Beamer today and said, Dad, hey man, I wanted to talk to you about the situation. You know, I know the job's come open at Virginia Tech, and again, he would have to be offered the job. Like, Virginia Tech could go hire anybody they want to, not named Shane Beamer, right? They have every right not to offer him the job. They might think that he's still too inexperienced to have that job. Now, my sentiment and statement that I made, I think I made this on the program, or maybe I made it talking to somebody recently, was this, and if I did say this on the show, just trust me. If South Carolina had kept Muschamp for a year, and this Fuente thing happened a year ago, can you give me a reason why Shane Beamer would not have been the name that Virginia Tech would have wanted then? I can't give you one they wouldn't have at least thrown it out there. I mean, if South Carolina was willing to hire him, wouldn't you believe that Virginia Tech would have been willing to hire him? Now, for South Carolina fans, this is a slippery slope, right? Because all of a sudden, you have to kind of say one way or the other. If you think higher of your program than Virginia Tech, then you immediately have to agree with me, right? Like if you put your program as a better job, then you have to agree with me that Virginia Tech, a lesser job in your mind's eye, would have offered him a job. Like that's not out of the realm of possibility. It's not like I'm saying South Carolina versus Alabama. We're talking about South Carolina versus Virginia Tech. And if you want to perceive your program to be more than Virginia Tech because of your league or whatever reasons you want to have, then you have to acknowledge that, yeah, he would have been hired at Virginia Tech then. So why, after a year of some level of success, again, marginal if they don't make it to the postseason, which it looked like they would a week ago at this time, but even still, if he calls up his father and he talks to his dad and he says, Dad, listen, I don't know what to do. I love it here in Columbia. We're just getting off to the start. I got this welcome home theme rocking and rolling. And, you know, I feel like I'm making some inroads, but I truly don't know what the best decision for me is. I want to be successful as a coach. What do you think his dad's going to say? You think his dad's going to say, son, I think you can have more success in Columbia? What is the goal if you're a head coach? Is the goal money? Financial security? Playing in the SEC? Where you raise your family? Is Blacksburg someplace people wouldn't want to raise a family? Is there not financial security at Virginia Tech? And is there not an easier path to success? Now, honestly, ask yourself that question. I don't care what your job is. Ask yourself, would you be more willing to take a job that could pay more, possibly, and you could have more success? Like what? Like I can't think of the reason to stick around South Carolina, quite frankly. I mean, you can tell me, well, the reason to stick around, Swanny, so you can coach in the SEC. That's the reason you stick around. And I scratch my head at that and go, why? Why would you go to Vanderbilt to coach in the SEC? No. Especially not if you had a job opening at Virginia Tech. Because you have a chance to go somewhere where you can realistically be successful. And I'll be honest, dream job, whatever job you want to call it, the man is not going to stand behind that podium this afternoon and say, yep, you know what? I can't wait for the call from Blacksburg because when it comes in, we're out of here. I mean, what kind of logic and sense would that make? If you ask a question about Virginia Tech and you're the head coach at South Carolina, your answer has to be what Shane Beamer said today. You can't give me an alternate option. You can't say next question. We're not going to talk about that at this point. We're focused on Auburn. That you might get by with that, but you're going to get blistered by people who say, why didn't you just stand up and say no? But then those same people that stand up and say no also get blistered when they leave because people go, I can't believe he was standing there and say no and then just up and leave. Yeah, until you have to be that guy, until you have to be the person standing behind that microphone while you're being paid by South Carolina. The man said what he had to say today. My arguments for why that job is a better job and a more likely job or a job where he might be more successful over the long haul all stand. None of that changes because you don't think that I could possibly be making a logical argument about why Shane Beamer would leave South Carolina. Now, whether he will or won't, I honestly don't know for sure, but I do think that it would make a lot of sense to go to Blacksburg if you're Shane Beamer. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. I can only give you a couple of reasons. One, I don't know where his wife is from, but if she's from Columbia, then yeah, okay. that might be a reason, because she would want to be near her parents versus him being near his parents in Blacksburg. So that would be one. And the other might be his kids. And again, that's a bit of a stretch, because you have to imagine that they are just so locked in on being Gamecocks right now. The heartbreak for young children to have to leave. Other than that, I can't really justify why you stay. I honestly can't justify it at all. Final segment of hour number one. Somehow this has turned into the Shane Beamer hour here on the program. Coming up in hour number two, Mike, you've enjoyed the program. We'll also hear from Dabo Swanny, as it was a Talking Tuesday up in Tigertown. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, be a part of the program anytime, any place, anywhere. Our website, put the .com on it. Doggone it. And I got to say this too. I really do have to say this. I don't know, before I get off of the Shane train, I don't know why you guys are so mad at me about my honesty. What do you want me to do? Lie to you, Gamecock Nation, to tell you that Shane Beamer's not ever going to leave? He's going to be there for eternity. This is the place that he loves. He can be more successful in Columbia. Is that what you want to hear? It's not the truth. It's just patently false. And I get it. I get it. That makes you angry. That just happens to be false. Well, I'm sorry. Somebody's got to tell you the truth. 803-450-0086. Yesterday on the program, we heard from Tony Elliott and Brent Venables. We did not get a chance to get anything else in here today. But it was nice yesterday to hear from Sheridan Jones, who had a great interception on Saturday. Just a great defensive play. Played it perfectly. Here's Sheridan Jones talking about whether or not he watched the North Carolina State Wake Forest game last weekend.
I definitely watched the game. Wake Forest is a great team, great quarterback, nice group of receivers. So, going into this game, we're going to have to be lights out in a DB unit and just play our game and go out there and do what we got to do.
Sheridan Jones was also asked about the Wake Forest wide receivers. Dabo Swanny said they are the best Clemson has seen this year. Here's what Jones had to say about that group.
I know one of them definitely has good length. I think it's a relationship with their quarterback. They run a lot of RPO option, and the quarterback knows their guys and when he wants to get them the ball, and then yeah.
Now, one of the other things that we've talked about here on the program the past couple of days is that mesh point and the RPOs that Wake Forest runs. Here's what Sheridan Jones said he's seen on film from them on that front.
I wouldn't say it puts a lot of stress on them with RPOs. We're not in the box, so we're basically the pass part, you know what I mean? So we come up whenever we have to, like if it's a cracker place or anything, but we basically, we check who's in front of us, we do what we have to do. So
there you go. So I'm Sheridan Jones again from yesterday up in Tigertown. 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. Hartman, the quarterback there for Wake Forest, Sam Hartman's been around for a while. And one of the things that Sheridan Jones was asked was just, about Hartman's game and what he's seen from him.
Watch him too.
My guy's touching me. I keep my eyes on my man. You know what I'm saying? Right. Just being patient and disciplined with everything that's going on around you.
Now, one of the other things, or one of the other aspects of taking on Hartman is how he's matured and how he's grown in that offense.
Over through the years, a lot of people gain confidence. You know what I'm saying? So I would say he's probably gained more confidence in that offense. Just years coming back, being in any type of scheme, you gain more confidence in playing and everything. So
again, the Clemson Tigers preparing for their matchup with Wake Forest. The Atlantic Coast Conference Championship, quote, not on the line per se, but Clemson's chances of having a 7-peat in the Atlantic Coast Conference are on the line. They will not get there if they lose to Wake Forest. They keep their hopes alive if they beat Wake Forest on Saturday. And one of the catalysts to Clemson's success could potentially be James Skalski, star linebacker. He's a super senior, and he'll be entering his last game in Death Valley on Saturday with a chance to run a 33-game winning streak out to 34. 4 games. Here's what he had to say about playing his last game at home.
It's near. It is. Man, I still can't believe it. But it all goes by so fast. It'll be Sunday before I know it, and it'll all be over, and it'll be on to the next. So, I mean, it was going to happen one way or another. So, I'm going to be emotional, but I mean, it is what it is.
James Skalski breaking it all down. He was asked about the 33-game home winning streak and what that means to him.
Swanny keeps saying the senior class can finish undefeated. My situation is a little weird because it's 6 years, so I've lost to Pittsburgh at home. That's my only home loss my freshman year. But, yeah, so over the past – we haven't lost a game in like 5 years at home, and it'd be pretty cool to go out, like you said, the longest win streak at home and keep it going, not only for, our class, but, for next year and the year after that, just keep the momentum going.
So there you go, James Skalski talking a little bit about the situation that is ahead. And it is funny that Swanny's brought that up, and you do have those, 5 or 6 super seniors that were a part of that 43-42 loss at home. So in their careers, just a singular 1-point loss for a couple of guys on this team. And I think that's significant, man, to keep that streak alive. And I think that's look, I don't think that's like so significant that you just say, man, it's going to completely change the outcome of the game. But I do think there's some added incentive to Clemson playing well in this ball game, offensively and defensively. Skalski was asked about this Wake Forest ball club and the team that he's seen so far on tape.
I mean, they're weird. Obviously, they got their RPO little scheme, and Hartman and the boys, they do a good job at. They're very cohesive. That's one thing you notice when you watch them is they all know the plan, they know the scheme, and they execute at a high level. They average like 50 points a game. They're the only team in the country that's put up at least 35 a game in every game. And so, it's going to be a challenge. They're good. They got playmakers, and they play hard. They play together.
So there you go, James Skalski again as Clemson gets set for their final home game of the regular season as they will take on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons before traveling to Columbia next weekend for that matchup against the Gamecocks. Hour 2, Mike Uva joins us right after this. Stay with us.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set! Just call me Swanny.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland. And, of course, Mike Uva from Gamecock Central joins us. Mike, listen, as we peek into the backyard of the South Carolina Gamecocks this week, a different tenor to the conversation after a week ago hammering Florida, but then going out to Missouri and falling behind big late in that game. They did fight back, 31-28, the final score. But it just had to be a disappointing night for South Carolina fans, players, coaches, given the fact that really I think the most logical of the remaining games on their schedule with Auburn and Clemson left, the most logical victory perhaps was already sitting in front of them.
Swanny, I've been covering the Gamecocks for 6 seasons, and you don't even have to be someone that has been a fan of the Gamecocks. You can be a Clemson fan. You've seen from afar. It just seems like as of late, whenever there's an opportunity for South Carolina to be able to step up, they always find a way just to fall flat in their face. And that's just how it's been for, it seems like, the last 7 seasons outside of that 2017 Outback Bowl year. So I think the bottom line is this. I had Jacob August, former Gamecock tight end, on our show on Monday.
Yeah.
For those of you that aren't familiar, we do a segment called Mix in the Water Monday. And basically, we just break down the game that was and kind of just look ahead by giving a perspective from a former player. So we had Jacob on this week, and he called it like he saw it, which was they were patting themselves in the back too much. They were reading the press clippings too much. And I know people probably don't even read press clippings really anymore because there's really no more newspapers out there. But, you get the point. They were getting a little too fat and jolly. And unfortunately, they weren't able to flush that win against Florida. And look, people can say after what they saw against Samford with Florida, maybe Florida's not as good as some people thought. Oh, it wasn't as good of a win. At the end of the day, it's still Florida. It's still an SEC team. You still have to find a way to get it done. And what South Carolina did against the Gators the week prior proved that they do have the capability of being able to move the football. They do have the capability of playing well in all three phases. Unfortunately, though, against Missouri, which we knew was going to be a challenging place for them to play, traveling all the way out to Timbuktu, they just weren't able to make adjustments and give Missouri credit. I had an opportunity to talk to Shane Beamer on Sunday night during those weekly teleconference, and I asked him, I said, did they do anything different defensively that maybe you guys hadn't seen on tape? And he said one of the things, the defensive ends were working upfield. They wanted Jason Brown to have to step up in the pocket, and he didn't do it. We saw him just roll out, try to do what he did the week prior. Well, here's the thing, kid. You're not at St. Francis anymore. And now people have tape on you, and he knows that now. So bottom line is this. You got to go back to the drawing board. You have a tough Auburn team coming into town who's coming off a disappointing loss to Mississippi State, and you have to be able to find a way to get a win either this week or next week, or else there's not going to be any bowl eligibility for you.
It's funny you say that about tape because that's something that I thought maybe has affected Clemson's DJ Uiagalelei. I think you may have even seen that out at Oklahoma with Caleb Williams. Just the fact that when he came on in that Texas game and was able to lead the Sooners back, there's not a lot of tape. There's more tape now. Dave Aranda did a great job against him defensively with Baylor's defense, and they slowed down that Oklahoma explosive offense. And again, especially if you're talking like with a kid like Brown, I mean, you're not talking about a guy who was projected to be a Heisman Trophy candidate or a former 5-star. So, I mean, it's not like you got to have boatloads of tape to figure out how to maybe make him uncomfortable. Am I right?
No, absolutely. And I think back to when I played college ball, sometimes when a guy transfers in and you don't have too much tape on them with their new team, because, Brown did have an opportunity to play in garbage time earlier in the year. You don't really know what you're getting out of them. On top of that, we know, and it hasn't just been the offensive line. There's been other issues, whether it be the tight ends, whether it be missed call protections at the line of scrimmage by the quarterback, running backs missing blocking assignments. The blocking as a whole, not just the offensive line, has just been in complete shambles for most of the season. So it's difficult as a defensive coordinator when you're trying to watch tape on a guy that you haven't seen before out there with that team in legitimate time, not garbage time. So you don't really know what you're going to get. So I think that also plays a role with it, because you can go back, watch film of him playing at St. Francis. It's just not the same. It's a different year. It's a different offensive line. So I think being able to see what he did against Florida, it was easy to be able to figure out how you stop him. And on top of that, one of the other things that Beamer mentioned, something that South Carolina did tremendously against Florida, but LSU did well against them too, and Georgia did too, was just being able to run counter to the right all game long. You know what Missouri did? They said, you aren't going to run the ball to the right side. If you want to beat us, you have to go left. And there's been some injuries in a lot of scrimmage for the Gamecocks, one of them being one of them. And because of that, it's kind of like a basketball player, right? Force him to his left. Force him to his left. Think back to when you were youth basketball or high school. Force him to his left. South Carolina doesn't want to use their left hand. And as a result, even going up against one of the worst rushing defense in the country, South Carolina had no answer because they just could not run the football the way they wanted to, which was going to the right side.
Mike Uva again with us. He's on Twitter at Mike_UVA. I found out this week, my cousin Richie, who tunes into the program, he said, Swanny, Uva is Italian for grape. Where have I been?
Yep.
Where have I been?
That's right. We're from Casino, Italy. So Italian means grape in Italian, means grape in Spanish. So I remember going to my grandparents' house, we'd have all the grapes all over the place. And then I'm sure, as Clemson fans have pointed out to you before, Gamecock fans point out to me, we do have a bunch of Virginia gear. Not because I went to Virginia. Like I said before, I wasn't smart enough to go there, but I am actually looking at in my living room right now, my grandfather would wear one of those UVA hats. We're not UVA fans, it's just
right.
has UVA on it. So I actually have his hat in my living room. But yeah, Uva, we had some UVA gear laying around at my grandparents' house, my house as a kid, and a bunch of grapes, just plastic grapes, this grape, that. So yeah, there you go, little Italian and Spanish lesson for you boys and girls today.
Yeah, we're coaching them up, man, making the listeners smarter. All right, Mike. So let me ask you this, because you said something that I kind of said on Friday. I use the analogy of Charlie Brown and Lucy for South Carolina, because it really did feel like that ball was teed up and Charlie was finally going to get to kick it, and they were going to go bowling. And now, I mean, it feels like it got ripped out from underneath them. They got Auburn this weekend. They got Clemson next weekend. Obviously, the second set of Tigers, the ones that I cover, look very vulnerable. But, man, it really does feel like, I think, for a lot of Gamecock fans, that ball just got yanked out from underneath them.
It does. It certainly does. And I've said it before on your airways. I have no alliance towards either school. I know I work for Gamecock Central, but that doesn't mean I work for the university. All I follow is Assumption football, who had an awful season this year, and then Holy Cross. Shout out to my old college coach, repeating in the Patriot League, Bob Chesney. So I say all that because it just seems like South Carolina's best bet now is going to be against Clemson.
Yeah.
The question is, though, are they going to be able to generate points? You've obviously been struggling offensively outside of that Florida game this year against Power 5 competition, at least. And we know that Clemson, although it hasn't been the season that they envisioned going into the year, they still have a pretty stingy defense. And, maybe some of the weaknesses are out there on the secondary. Well, good thing, Clemson fans. South Carolina, outside of Josh Vann, no other receivers really stepped up this year consistently. You can throw in tight ends like Nick Muse, but there really hasn't been a second threat there. So what does that allow you to do? It allows you to bring a safety down the box and basically say, hey, you're not going to run the football on us. We'll double team Vann. You're going to have to beat us by throwing it to someone else. So it is going to be difficult for him. But with that all being said, like I mentioned, having Jacob August on earlier in the week, he said that the focus this week, there's no question that they're not going to be overlooking Auburn, looking at Clemson, because that's sometimes a fair, right? You get the big game coming up a week from now. People are talking about it on campus. There has just been such a bad taste left in a lot of players' mouths in terms of how Mike Bobo left USC, that they don't want to see this guy come on in with a new team, a better team, and push them around and be able to beat them. So their focus this week, they are lasered in. Are they going to say that when they meet with the media? Probably not. But at the same time, too, I mean, this is a guy that is very close to a lot of those players inside that locker room. And, you can put that aside. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. Do you want to see someone that you were with, your ex, be happier with someone else? Of course not. You might say that. No one in that locker room wants to see Bobo have success.
Mike Uva again is on Twitter at Mike_UVA. GamecockCentral.com is the website that he works for, and he does a tremendous job. Nobody covers the South Carolina Gamecocks better than Mike Uva. I can guarantee you that. And so, Mike, as we take a look at the scenario, you mentioned it, that Clemson game. The other thing is, at this point, who would have thought that Clemson would be in the situation they're in, where the offense, even against UConn, was struggling. And again, I've said most of the season, I think a lot of it goes back to DJ Uiagalelei, but you can't help but notice the injuries that have just mounted week in and week out across the board for Clemson, whether it's offensive linemen, skill position players, running backs. I mean, it's just a really banged up team. And I do think that if there's like this bright spot out there for South Carolina, it's that Clemson's got to face maybe their toughest test outside of Georgia in a Wake Forest team that's probably going to be ranked inside the top 10 tonight when the college football playoff rankings come out, or at least close to it. And while the name Wake Forest doesn't garner a lot of attention, I mean, they played really good football for most of the season offensively. And who knows, man, Clemson could lose another player or two. And DJ's already banged up. So you don't even know really who's going to be the quarterback when the Tigers and Gamecocks face off on the 27th.
You don't. And I think one of the things that Clemson has just been very, very fortunate with over these last, 10 seasons or so, they've been healthy for the most part. Obviously that's something that South Carolina has caught the bug. It seemed like almost every year when Muschamp was here outside of that Outback Bowl season. So, I say all that because it just seems like the stars are kind of lining up for USC, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. I think that's something that Gamecock fans need to realize. The stars are lining up for them to be able to have a tremendous opportunity to be able to beat a team who has just absolutely just kicked you around.
Yeah.
I mean, they've ragdoll you. There's no other way to put it. And with that being said, you'll be playing under the lights at Williams-Brice. You hadn't had an opportunity to play them a year ago. You haven't played them in 2 seasons. I mean, this is a tremendous, tremendous opportunity the way it's setting up. But that does not mean it's going to be a cakewalk by any means. I mean, this could be a game where Clemson, comes out, they have their struggles, and USC is able to pull off the upset. That's great. It's great for the Gamecocks. But at the same time, too, Clemson could come out there and just absolutely push them around because this USC team has not been able to show that consistency on offense. Defensively, they've made improvements. Clayton White, the defensive coordinator, he's up for the Broyles Award. He's done a tremendous job with that defense. Is it perfect? Is it better than Clemson's defense? No, not by any means. But in terms of where it was left off a year ago, I mean, the team that was 2-8, and then the year prior only had 4 wins. They've made tremendous strides on defense. They've made tremendous strides on special teams. It's just that offense just has not been consistent outside of that Florida game.
All right, Mike, so let's talk about it. I was looking on one of the ticketing sites. I can't even remember which one at this point. One of the reselling kind of, whether it was, I can't remember if it was SeatGeek or StubHub. I don't really care either way at this point. But I was looking, and, man, there are a lot of seats available for that Clemson, South Carolina game. And I know that you and I have talked about a little bit of the lethargic nature that South Carolina fans have shown this year in a lot of respects as showing up at Williams-Brice. I know Clemson fans, Mike, don't feel all that great about what their team's been doing and aren't overly excited about the way the season is progressing. But I would venture to guess if Gamecock fans don't gobble up the tickets that are out there, and there are a lot of them available, that there's going to be a lot of orange at Williams-Brice Stadium because Clemson fans at least have the streak to fight for. Or do you think that South Carolina fans will come out at the end of the day when it's all said and done and that night game kickoff at Williams-Brice on the SEC network finally arrives?
I think a lot of it has to do with what happens on Saturday. And I'm not even talking from a win-loss standpoint. I'm talking about, does South Carolina show progress from an offensive standpoint? Do they show fight, or do they come out and they look flat? Do they look like the way they played towards the end of the first quarter and second quarter outside of that defensive stand at the goal line, even though they gave Missouri pretty much the entire field to march down to give that field goal? Or do they, or do they come up flat? They have to be able to perform. And if they don't perform, you're going to irritate a lot of people. And here, look, I've said it before. Said it probably last week on your airwaves. Gamecock fans are not some of the best fans around. It's such a cliche thing in sports to say it. I'm so sick and tired of hearing it. You hear players go professional. We have the best fans around. We could shut up. Really. Just stop it. You don't. Because you know what fans do? They go out there consistently. They're upset with something. Okay, that's fine. The 2 seasons when South Carolina went 0-21, that fan base is not the same fan base now. I'm sorry. It's not your brother's Gamecock fan base. And does that mean Clemson might come out and take some extra tickets? They could. But I'm interested to see how well Clemson travels because they've been spoiled.
Right.
They've been spoiled. It's kind of been like the Patriots for such a long period of time. Do you come out and you continue to show that support? Or do you say, yeah, screw it, it's going to be cold, it's a night game? At least they have a little bit more of an excuse because you got to make that trip from Clemson to come all the way down to Columbia. But it's not like you're going from Clemson to Utah. So I would not be shocked if South Carolina goes out there and lays an egg next week if more Clemson fans are in the crowd. Or I wouldn't say more, but to the point where it's noticeable with the amount of orange you see in the stands.
Well, a lot of things still have to happen for Clemson to get to the Atlantic Coast Conference Championship game, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that Clemson could get there. Again, they would have to beat Wake Forest. Wake Forest would then have to lose to Boston College. Boston College has Phil Dracovic back at quarterback, so that's a positive. And then North Carolina State would have to lose one of their final 2 games, either to Syracuse or North Carolina, probably the Tar Heels being the most logical. Now, the thing is, though, if Clemson wins, if the Tigers win this Saturday against Wake Forest, they'll at least know that going into that game against South Carolina, they still have a backdoor opportunity to slide into the ACC championship game, which you kind of mentioned what the Auburn game could do for the South Carolina fan base. Maybe a victory over a top 10. I'm assuming a top 10 Wake Forest team tonight when those rankings come out. I would imagine might re-energize the Clemson fan base just ahead of the rivalry game.
I agree with that. But I think more importantly, I think it would re-energize this team because we could all sit here and be like, oh, USC, when Clemson play, they understand the meaning of this rivalry. Some of these people aren't even from this state. I mean, let's just call it for what it is. They're not from the state. I remember interviews a couple of years ago, whether it be Gamecock players or Clemson players, I didn't even realize this was that big of a deal. I know Gamecock and Clemson fans don't want to hear that, but I said it today. I'm not from the state. I don't think it gets the type of respect on a national level in comparison to some of the more, national
marquee teams. Ohio State,
exactly,
Michigan.
Auburn. I'm not going to rank them here. I mean, obviously the Ohio State, Michigan one is a tremendous one. The Iron Bowl, we know what that means, especially with two teams, same state as well, playing in the same division, not just the conference, the same division. You got the Egg Bowl with Ole Miss, Mississippi State. So I say all that because I do feel like because Clemson has had the type of success they've had against South Carolina, it just hasn't really meant as much in comparison to maybe what it should feel like. And the reason I say that is because Clemson has had bigger fish to fry over the last 5+ years. They really haven't had to worry about South Carolina. Why are you going to worry about South Carolina? We have to get ready for the college football playoff. We have to get ready for the national championship. So if they lose against Wake Forest going into this game, I'd be interested to see just how they respond because now you're not going to be playing for a conference title. And now for the first time, you're actually playing for something that's meaningful outside of going to a college football playoff because you just kind of assumed. And outside of that Jake Bentley year when they went to Clemson, they were able to kind of put some points up, but even though they couldn't stop Clemson offense, the series really it's been one-sided. So I'm just interested to see what happens this weekend against Wake Forest and how Clemson responds based on what happens, knowing if they're not playing for a conference title, what happens in that USC series. Because they can come out and say, oh, we understand the importance. A lot of those players have not had to deal with this really being a rivalry whatsoever because it has just been a one-side butt whipping for a majority of those guys that have been there, their careers.
Mike Uva, again, follow him on Twitter at Mike_UVA. Mike, man, always good to catch up with you. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate you, Swanny.
We'll hit a quick break and react to what Mike had to say after this. Back at it, hour number 2 of the show that shakes the Southland. So some news out of Tiger Town earlier today, and we'll get you some Dabo Swinney audio here in a minute. But we heard it when we were talking to John Blau and didn't have a chance to get into it before we got up with Mike. But the news about Clemson losing Justin Ross, who played the entire year, as Swinney let us know on Sunday during his teleconference, with a stress fracture in his foot. We'll have potentially screws inserted in his foot on Thursday. That could change depending on how Justin Ross feels on Wednesday. Swinney said it was one of the greatest blessings of his life being able to watch Justin Ross play football for the last 10 games. Again, remember, Ross a year ago with the congenital neck issue keeping him out after having an explosive freshman season and then not a, quote, monumental sophomore year, but a good sophomore year, leading many people to believe he would be one of the top wideouts a year ago. Now, since coming back, that has certainly not materialized, and part of that I think is probably on the shoulders of DJ Uyunglele. But with this injury, Clemson will not have a single senior starting on Saturday on offense. Additionally, I think the question you have to ask yourself at this point about Justin Ross is, will he come back and play another season at Clemson? And I'll be honest with you, given what we've seen from him this year, 46 receptions, 514 yards, and 3 touchdowns, I don't know that Justin Ross would leave. I honestly don't know if Justin Ross would leave. Swinney said if it's the last time he gets to see Ross play at Clemson, he's thankful. But I got to tell you, I don't know what Justin Ross's draft stock is right now. I don't even know if I'd be willing to take a chance on him if I'm the NFL. Again, given the neck injury, and then given the way he's played this year, and I know I know the foot injury doesn't necessarily correlate to the neck, but are you willing to roll that dice if you're in the NFL? I don't know that I am. I don't know that I'm willing to bank it on what he once was. I think I want to see more. Now, for Ross, he gets to make that decision himself. Like, if he wants to roll the dice, that's all well and good. But I certainly think he would be better served at this point to stick around for another year. But we kick things off with Dabo Swinney's press conference from earlier today. He talked about Colonel Ben Scarden, who passed away at the age of 104. Colonel Scarden was one of the survivors of the Bataan Death March and was recently in the, I wouldn't say the news per se, but recently, I guess it was on the weekend, Friday or Saturday, the news came out that Scarden, who graduated from Clemson in 1938, would be promoted to the rank of Brigadier General in the United States Army. Now, with all of that being said, I also would like to note that the Bataan Death March, a fantastic book written by my grandfather who graduated from Clemson right around the time Brigadier General Scarden, and you'll forgive me if I don't have the proper military cadence and whether when it's appropriate to say even after someone's passed away, if that rank has not been placed upon them. I don't know the rules, but I will tell you that my grandfather's cousin, Manny Lawton, wrote a book called Some Survive because Manny Lawton was a part of that Bataan Death March. It's an eyewitness's account. That book is available, by the way, on Amazon if you're interested in it. Again, that would be about my grandfather's cousin telling that story, and he is also a Clemson graduate. Nonetheless, Dabo Swinney commented on Ben Scarden's life and legacy earlier today.
All right, thanks, Ross. Good morning. First of all, just want to offer up my thoughts and prayers for Colonel Ben Scarden and his family. I just heard about that coming out of a meeting here, and didn't know that. But what a great man, and unbelievable life, and really just an honor to know him. So just thoughts and prayers with his family, and again, life well lived for sure.
Dabo Swinney also talked about the matchup coming up with Wake Forest and the significance just in terms of what Clemson's got on the line.
But we're excited about this matchup this week. It's good to be at home again. And hopefully this week, we coming off of a noon game last week. Hopefully that'll help our guys, really have a good week of preparation this week as far as just the routine, because it is a little different in getting yourself ready, your clock and all those type of things to play at noon. Your everything's just ramped up. So I think that experience will be good for our guys.
And, I'll be honest, I think that is a valuable point that Dabo Swinney makes there, because when you think about this team over the years and how good they've been and how frequently they've played afternoon and later games, it probably is a pretty big deal that arguably the biggest game, not named Clemson versus Georgia in the opener, comes 1 week exactly after you play a noon game, which kind of helps you settle in, right? And be accustomed to that early start, the breakfast, the early kickoff, things that have been unfamiliar to this team in recent years. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. So when we come back, we'll hear a little bit more from Dabo Swinney because there is that level of recognition about this senior group and these senior leaders who have had so much success at Clemson. And look, their careers are not over. There's still an outside chance that they could make it to an ACC championship game and an outside chance that they can make it to a Big Six bowl game. I mean, that's still available incredibly in the midst of a season where so many people feel like it has been a bad year. It's been a down year, not a bad year. Disappointing year, certainly. As I called it yesterday, the offense has been discombobulated all week, or excuse me, all season. Nonetheless, we hit a quick break. We'll come back and we'll hear what Dabo Swanny has to say about these guys that have been a part of this program for so long and what's on the line for them and what it means this Saturday in Death Valley. The show that shakes the Southland, the People Show, Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan with you on a Tuesday afternoon, a Talking Tuesday in Tiger Town. Dabo Swanny talked about these Clemson seniors. This is their final game in Death Valley, and it's a big one against Wake Forest. Here's what he had to say about that group and what they've meant to the program.
We celebrate all year and work all year for these moments, 6, 7, games a year. And then we get the spring game, where we open up the Valley. So it's just a special place. It's an unbelievable environment to be able to do something that you love to do. And so really just excited to have another opportunity. I hope our crowd will come out and man, come Friday if you can, and pitch a 10 or something, and let's be ready to go on Saturday. This is going to be a great matchup. It's exciting for our guys, just a lot going on with Senior Day this week. You got some guys that have really had great careers and have made great contributions to this program over the last 4, 5, 6 years in some cases. And so taking an opportunity to celebrate them, it's always an emotional week. It really is. It's always a little bit sad too, because this is the last time, you're going to get a chance for them to play in that stadium. And it's the last time for us as coaches to have a chance to coach them in that environment. And so their career's coming to an end. But it's also exciting because that they're well prepared. These guys that are here, 4 and 5 years, they walk out of here with a great foundation for life. So excited to be a part of that. I've got a son that's a part of it as well. So that's obviously a even added thing for me this week. And so again, just looking forward to a great day, a great crowd, and I think it's going to be a beautiful day. So should be a good one.
One other thing to keep your eyes on this Saturday is the fact of how young this Clemson Tiger team will be, especially offensively. Here's Dabo Swanny sort of updating that.
I mean, you don't have a single senior starting for you with Ross out. We only have 2 juniors starting for us in Davis Allen and McFadden, because Putnam's reclassified as a sophomore, and everybody else is freshman and sophomore. So, we're still in a little bit of a development stage. We're going to start a true freshman at receiver, a true freshman at receiver, a true sophomore at receiver. We got another true freshman in there at tight end with Davis, and a couple of freshman backs and a sophomore back. You got Trotter and Rayburn, first year guys really getting a chance to play. First year starter at quarterback, so a lot of new pieces there. This is kind of a game of strength on strength if you look at it. We've been really good on defense. They've been really, really good on offense. We've been inconsistent offensively and not a lot of continuity throughout the year. But both groups have made some strides, their defense, our offense. So I think it's a good matchup.
So there you go, Dabo Swanny talking about Wake Forest. He also talked about the comment that he made earlier about Will Putnam reclassifying, and he was asked about just how figuring out the recruiting classes and all of that's going to work.
No, nobody's figured out that. There's not a coach on the planet that's figured out recruiting. Are you kidding me? No, that's what he's expressed to Robbie, is that he's one of those guys that wants that year back. And he played, he had played a little bit as a freshman. I think he wants the opportunity to have that year, which is great. We certainly would love that, but there's nobody that's figured out 23 recruiting. There's very few that have figured out 22. We feel like we're in a good place, roster wise right now where we sit and who we're recruiting. Our numbers, we're going to be right there. Like for example, our number in the OL is 15. We're going to right now. We'll probably sign 2 guys. We're going to be at 15. We'll be right at our number. But something could change next week. Something could change tonight in college football. So, it's fluid in recruiting. Nobody's got it figured out anymore as far as where you can project, okay, our 23 class, here's where we're, because you got a couple issues. You don't know how your current roster is going to shape out because you could pretty much say, okay, you might have an attrition of a couple at a place like Clemson, but it's different now and it's different everywhere. That's one issue. And the other issue is you got COVID, all the way through, is it 24 or 5, whatever year it is, that you've got to manage that because we don't get any relief. Everybody's got to count. This year it didn't matter, right? So all these guys, Skowski, they didn't count against we had 92 scholarships or whatever. But next year, if somebody comes back for a COVID year, they got to be in your 85. So how do you know? It's kind of hard to go to a guy and say, hey, in December of 23, do you think you're going to want to come back? Are you kidding me? These kids don't know where they're going to, which pizza place they want to go to this weekend. It's a crazy world. I've never in my life thought I would experience anything like it. When I first got into coaching, we didn't offer anybody till like January. You didn't sign anybody till January of their senior year. That's it. You never knew. Nobody committed either. There were no commitments. You just kind of recruited, so you'd have to recruit all these guys, and then you'd figure it out in January. That's when you'd figure it all out.
There you go. So Dabo Swanny giving it to you, man. And it is a much, much more complicated situation. He also talked about the transfer portal a little bit, as that is another one of those areas of, I don't know if you want to call it concern, but certainly it's an area of watch as Clemson has a portal that apparently flushes one way only. It's more of a toilet in Tiger Town. I will let you know once it becomes an actual portal. I don't. Let's see here. Let's have some fun. You know me. I like to have a little fun here on the program. So define portal.
As a noun, portal is usually defined as a door, gate, or entrance, especially one of imposing appearance, as to a palace. For more, ask me to give you more definitions for portal.
No, I'm good. I'm pretty sure all of those things you gave me go both ways. I don't think they go one direction. Final segment. Let's talk about the portal next.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Tuesday afternoon. Lawton Swan with you here, the show that shakes the Southland. All right, portal. Sweeney's portal. Could it be opening? Is the portal open? Beam me up, Scotty. I don't know if we're ever going to hear anything positive from Sweeney about the portal, but here we go. Let's lean in on him a little bit at least.
There's not a school in the country that's not going to have to recruit the portal. That's what's been created. There's not a school anywhere. Everybody is, in Division I football is going to have to deal with the portal some form or fashion because you're going to have gaps in your roster, somewhere. Because, again, they have until May 1 to say, hey, I'm out. And that's the world we've created now. That's the way it is. I mean, I don't like it, but that's the way the world is. You just deal with it. But they have until May 1. So you have guys leave after spring or in the spring semester. The next thing, you're going to have mid-years leave. You're going to have mid-years show up at all these schools. And they go, I don't like it. Dang, I'm third team. Oh, mat drills. They yelled at me. They're going to leave. So guess what? There's no high school kids to sign in May. Where are you going to get high school kids in May? There aren't any. They didn't exist. And so there's no barriers anymore in college football. There's no reason for pause. There isn't. It's just, ready, shoot, aim. There's none of that anymore. So you don't have any other choice now. So I don't think we'll deal with it like everybody, but we won't be as affected as a lot of these programs, because just who we are. I mean, it'll still be different for us, and hopefully we don't have to. But we're not going to just do it to do it. It's got to be strategic. It's got to be the right fit. It's got to be the same criteria and things like that. And I think, too, kids that are going in the portal, they want to go be starters. Nobody wants to come be the third team running back at Clemson. If you know of any of those guys, let me know. All right? They want to come be the fourth team running back at Clemson. Let me know who those guys are. The grad transfer. There ain't many of those. Most kids are in the portal, and that's the sad part. You're going to have a lot of kids in the portal, and they're not going to – there's nowhere for them to go. And but that's where we are, and there's not a single school in America that won't have to deal with it. So when it happens, it'll be one of the greatest days in the history of Clemson. When we, Grace will love it. She'll write a great article about our first ever portal. We'll track his DNA, and we'll meet his aunt and uncles, and it'll be the greatest moment ever. And he better be a player.
That was he better be a player. 803-450-0086 text line, phone line. Speaking of the guy that didn't come in via the portal, but he did come in as a walk-on, Hunter Renfrow. Did you guys see the route he ran the other night in the NFL? Listen, I watched it first in regular motion, and I said it needed to be in slow motion, and then I decided, you know what? I think I can walk. I can jog through this thing or scroll through this thing slow enough. Y'all, I'm going to tell you what, man. People talk about Hunter Renfrow and the surprise of how good he is, and oftentimes that picture of Hunter Renfrow holding some grapes in his dorm room shows up. But truth be told, he must have some of the strongest thighs in the NFL. Like, I know people talk about pound for pound strength. I'm telling you, thigh for thigh strength. That dude has to be one of the strongest people in the NFL. I mean, the ability to run as low to the ground as he does, to shrug off the defender, to almost, I don't think purposely fall, but fake falling, pop up, and then to ward off the defender's hands. Oh, it is a glorious touchdown route. And it feels like we're destined to see that for years to come. I mean, I don't know if he'll be, a Wes Welker, one of these great slot receivers for the long haul, but, there is a place for guys that play the way Hunter Renfrow plays in the NFL. And when you can get open, you are a valuable weapon. And look no further than what you kind of witnessed at Clemson this year offensively. As much criticism as I have given DJ Uiagalelei, if you truly watch these wide receivers, how many of them get space? How many of them are open? How many of them provide a legitimate opportunity for DJ to hit him in space? Not many. It's rare. I mean, every window is tight. Every window is tight. Again, thank you to John Blau for joining us in hour number 1. Thank you to Mike Yuva for joining us in hour number 2. My apologies to Gamecock Nation for just giving it to you like it, giving you the truth. I know you like your fluff and stuff, whatever. The fact of the matter is you come to hear the show that shakes the Southland because I tell you like it really is. And the truth is the Virginia Tech job is a better job, and it's a job you could be more successful at. Does that mean Shane Beamer will take it? No, it doesn't guarantee it. But I think he'd be foolish not to. And that's why I laid out the game plan for why I think Shane Beamer would take it and all of the other considerations I gave you. Again, always good to hear from Dabo Swanny. And don't forget about our website. Put the .com on it, doggone it, and subscribe. Support us just $63.17 for 1 year of coverage of your Clemson Tigers. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com. We got to get out of here. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, as always, y'all take care now. And go Tigers.